Lily Harper had always dreamed of a fresh start, somewhere far from the cobblestone streets and judging eyes of Boston. Now, as the train slowed with a rhythmic hiss, wheels grinding against the tracks beneath the glaring prairie sun, reality tightened in her chest. Fingers trembling slightly, she adjusted the delicate lace collar that concealed her neck, aware it wouldn't hide everything. She rose, clutching a small leather bag containing all she owned. Outside, the rugged frontier town of Silver Creek emerged from clouds of steam, dusty roads flanked by weathered buildings, painted signs faded by relentless winds. Her heart quickened. She imagined kindness and acceptance might await a man who'd pledged love and a life together in heartfelt letters. His words had brought her west, promising safety she'd never known. Passengers began filing off the train. Drawing a deep breath, Lily followed, her polished boots touching unfamiliar ground. Sunlight immediately felt harsher here, scouring her pale skin and making her squint into the dry heat. Whispers rippled along the platform, eyes glancing toward her face. Lily's heart sank. She pulled her bonnet forward, yet knew its shadows wouldn't mask everything. Lily Harper? The voice was rough-edged, distinctly lacking the tenderness her fiancé's letters had held. Turning, she faced Emmett Cole, tall and broad-shouldered in worn denim, his hat pulled low over suspicious eyes. He stared openly, scanning her face, his jaw visibly tightening. Her throat tightened too, recognizing that look. "I am," she managed, voice steady despite the rising dread. Cole shook his head slowly, his gaze hardening. "That's not what was promised." Confused murmurs stirred the growing crowd. Lily felt heat bloom painfully across her chest, humiliation gripping her like claws. She struggled to speak. "Mr. Cole, You never said you was marked like that." He spat the words as though they were poisoned. "They said I get a proper woman, not someone cursed." Lily's fingers involuntarily brushed the patches of pale white skin along her jaw, suddenly feeling exposed, vulnerable beneath the townspeople's collective judgment. The familiar shame surged, memories of whispered taunts, and hateful glances flooding back. Around her, townsfolk openly stared, their gazes sharp with judgment, curiosity, and barely concealed disgust. Cole stepped back, distancing himself physically and symbolically. "Deal's off. Ain't no place for your kind here." A sharp, hurtful silence followed, louder than any shout could have been. Cole pivoted away, dismissing her presence entirely as he pushed roughly through the crowd. Left alone on the platform, Lily stood frozen in shock, the weight of dozens of eyes pressing upon her. A small child pointed, asking loudly, "Mama, what's wrong with her face?" Lily stumbled back, eyes blurred by shameful tears, when suddenly a voice, gentler, yet firm, broke through the suffocating humiliation. "That's enough, all of you." She turned slowly. Standing near a stack of barrels, partially shadowed by the station's awning, was a tall, lean man. Dark-haired, quiet intensity marked his features, softened only slightly by compassion in his storm-gray eyes. He stepped forward, his stance protective, commanding a silent authority the crowd reluctantly obeyed. One by one, eyes dropped, murmurs faded, and townsfolk dispersed like scattered leaves. The stranger approached cautiously, maintaining a respectful distance. His voice was calm, the anger from moments ago carefully hidden behind practiced restraint. "Are you all right, miss?" She hesitated, humiliation stinging fresh tears into her eyes. "I'll manage. Thank you for your kindness." He paused, as if weighing his words carefully. "Ethan Raines. I run the blacksmith's forge just outside town. If you need somewhere safe tonight, I can offer a room." Lily regarded him warily, betrayal still fresh. Ethan's eyes held genuine warmth, yet trust had become difficult after the painful rejection moments earlier. Still, she had nowhere else. Her pride burned, but practicality spoke louder. "That's very kind, Mr. Raines. I have nowhere else to turn." He nodded quietly, extending his hand to take her modest luggage, careful not to invade her space. "Come then." They walked in silence through Silver Creek, past suspicious glances and whispers held low enough not to provoke Ethan's steady glare. Lily studied him carefully, noting the gentle but guarded manner, the quiet confidence in his movements. He was different than Emmett Cole, different from men she'd known back east, reserved yet respectful. His home lay just beyond the outskirts, a modest ranch with a tidy yard, whitewashed fences weathered from sun and wind. A small forge glowed softly near a neatly stacked woodpile, iron tools and horseshoes arranged precisely nearby. Ethan ushered her inside, the simple warmth of the place immediately soothing some of her shame. "Make yourself comfortable," he said, indicating a wooden chair near a glowing hearth. "I'll heat some tea. You look as though you could use it." Lily sat cautiously, eyes drifting around the modest cabin. Everywhere spoke of practicality: sturdy furniture, woven blankets, tools neatly arranged by function rather than decoration. There was no pretension here, only quiet resilience. "You don't owe me this kindness," she murmured, fingers smoothing her skirt nervously. "Especially after." Ethan glanced up from a stove, his expression softening with understanding. "Cole's a fool. The marks you bear are nothing compared to the darkness some folks hide inside. Ignore him." His words surprised her, sharp yet oddly comforting. She studied her hands, struggling to contain emotions that welled painfully. "He isn't the first to turn away." He placed a steaming mug gently before her, taking a seat across the table, maintaining respectful distance. "Then let him be the last." The quiet sincerity of his words warmed her more deeply than any tea could. She met his gaze directly, a fragile trust forming. "Why help me?" For a long moment, Ethan was silent. When he spoke, his voice carried a raw edge. "Because I've seen too much cruelty dressed as judgment. Lost someone dear to it. I won't stand idle watching it again." His voice, heavy with pain carefully held in check, stirred Lily's curiosity. Ethan rose abruptly, turning toward the window, hands braced on the sill as though steadying himself against painful memory. The silence between them stretched long, filled with unspoken thoughts. Lily stood quietly, joining him at the window. Outside, the vast prairie stretched endlessly beneath an amber sky, golden grasses rippling in a gentle breeze. Beside her, Ethan's shoulders were tense, muscles taut beneath his faded shirt. "Tell me," she urged gently, sensing his struggle. "Please." He sighed deeply, voice low with restrained grief. "My wife was Cherokee. Folks here weren't kind. Prejudice is a poison. They drove her away. She died alone, trying to escape the hatred." Lily's heart ached with empathy, understanding his pain through her own. She reached instinctively, touching his sleeve lightly. Ethan flinched slightly at her gesture, but then relaxed beneath her quiet comfort. "I'm sorry," she whispered sincerely. Ethan met her eyes again, his gaze softer, more open. "Don't apologize. Just promise you won't let them break you too." His words resonated deeply. Lily saw herself through his eyes then, realizing that the marks she bore, once her greatest shame, were simply part of who she was, no less worthy of kindness or respect. "I'll try," she said finally, her voice growing stronger. "And thank you for seeing me." Ethan smiled faintly, warmth brightening his face for the first time. "You're worth seeing clearly." Outside, hoofbeats suddenly thundered toward the cabin, interrupting their quiet moment. Ethan tensed, immediately alert. Lily's pulse quickened, fear returning swiftly. A harsh knock echoed sharply through the small house, angry and insistent. Ethan moved protectively between Lily and the door, eyes narrowed cautiously. "Open up, Rains," came Emmett Cole's furious voice, thickened by alcohol and rage. "Send that cursed girl out, or there'll be hell to pay." Lily stared wide-eyed, dread pooling coldly inside her chest. Ethan met her frightened gaze steadily, determination hardening his features. "Stay back," he whispered firmly. "I won't let him harm you." Taking a deep breath, Ethan stepped toward the door, fists clenched, shoulders squared. Lily watched him move, quiet, resolute courage in every step, and felt hope stir faintly within her for the first time since arriving in Silver Creek. She had come west searching for acceptance and love. Perhaps in Ethan Rains, she'd found something far more valuable, someone who truly saw her beyond the surface. Whatever came next, Lily knew she wasn't alone. Ethan pulled open the door just enough to stare Emmett Cole in the eyes, his frame rigid with calm defiance. Cole swayed slightly, his breath heavy with the acrid scent of whiskey, his glare savage beneath the rim of his hat. "Step aside, Rains," Cole slurred dangerously. "This don't concern you." Ethan didn't flinch. "You're on my land, Emmett. Whatever happens here concerns me plenty." Cole's eyes narrowed, his fingers twitching toward the revolver at his side. Tension crackled in the air, tangible as the desert heat. Lily stood motionless behind Ethan, her heart pounding furiously. She'd seen men fight before, but this felt rawer, more personal. A battle of honor and pride, woven thickly with her own shame and fear. "You sure you want to protect someone marked like that?" Cole sneered loudly, pitching his voice deliberately for Lily to hear. "She's cursed, Rains. A woman like that'll only bring death and misery." Ethan's voice dropped lower, steel threading through his tone. "Misery's already standing at my doorstep. I suggest you ride on out before you get hurt." Cole laughed bitterly, stumbling backward slightly. "You threatening me, blacksmith?" "No threats," Ethan replied quietly, deadly calm. "Just telling you how it's going to be." A dark, furious silence settled between them, broken only by Cole's heavy breaths. He finally spat onto the dirt at Ethan's feet, a crude gesture of disdain, and turned toward his waiting horse. "This ain't over," Cole growled, mounting unsteadily. "You're making enemies tonight." "I'll bear it," Ethan responded, voice tight. Cole rode away in a cloud of dust, leaving an uneasy quiet behind him. Only when his figure disappeared over the horizon did Ethan allow his shoulders to relax slightly. Turning back inside, he closed the door, carefully locking it behind him. Lily exhaled a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. "I'm sorry," she murmured softly, guilt seeping through every word. "You shouldn't have to bear this burden." Ethan met her gaze steadily, compassion evident beneath the tired lines etched around his eyes. "Don't take responsibility for their ignorance. I made my choice." Lily lowered her eyes, warmth flooding her cheeks. She'd always hidden her face, ashamed to let others see her clearly. Yet Ethan looked without judgment or revulsion. The sincerity of his kindness threatened to break through walls she had carefully built over years of quiet suffering. The following days brought uneasy peace. Silver Creek buzzed with whispered stories about the blacksmith who'd taken in the marked woman. Ethan's customers dwindled, neighbors kept distant, and his forge stood ominously silent. He endured quietly, never complaining, focused instead on teaching Lily the rudiments of frontier survival, milking cows, fetching water from the creek, and learning the stubborn temperament of horses. Each task was difficult, yet Ethan's patience remained unwavering. One morning, while struggling to saddle a mare named Bella, Lily found herself laughing softly despite frustration. Ethan watched, a faint smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. "You're finding humor in this now," he teased gently. "Perhaps," she answered, brushing sweat from her forehead. "Better laughter than tears." His eyes softened. "Laughter suits you better, too." Lily paused, gazing at Ethan thoughtfully. She found herself genuinely smiling for the first time in months. "Thank you for giving me reasons." He nodded quietly, but something heavy shadowed his eyes, a burden he hadn't yet voiced. That evening, over a simple supper of beans and cornbread, Ethan finally spoke openly. "Lily, you deserve to know something about why I reacted so strongly that day at the station." Lily set down her spoon, sensing the depth of his impending words. "Please." He gazed into the flickering fire, shadows playing across his face. "My wife, Clara, was Cherokee. When we settled here, folks didn't approve. They called her names far worse than what you've heard. Cursed, witch, devil-born." He hesitated, emotions tight in his throat. "One night, they burned our barn, trying to scare us off. Clara was inside, saving horses. She got trapped and hurt badly. By morning, she was gone." Lily reached instinctively, her hand brushing Ethan's. His fingers trembled slightly beneath her touch. "I'm so sorry," she whispered, pain tightening her chest. He turned, eyes filled with quiet anguish. "That's why I can't watch cruelty happen again." People fear what's different. They forget the true scars come from within. Lily swallowed hard, eyes shimmering. Ethan had given her shelter, kindness, even protection. But now he offered something far more profound: understanding. "You've carried this burden alone too long," she murmured. Ethan's smile was bittersweet. "Maybe, but now at least someone else understands." Their bond deepened subtly from that night onward, forged quietly through shared chores, gentle encouragement, and mutual respect. Lily marveled at how comfortable their silences became, warm and healing rather than awkward. Yet beneath the fragile peace lay tension, whispers growing louder in Silver Creek. Emmett Cole's dark threats lingered like storm clouds on the horizon. Then, one moonless night, disaster struck. Lily awoke, coughing violently, thick smoke stinging her eyes and lungs. Panic surged as she realized flames consumed the forge beside Ethan's cabin. She scrambled from bed, stumbling toward Ethan's room. He met her halfway, soot streaked across his face, urgency sharpening every line. "Stay low," he shouted over roaring flames. They set fire to the forge. Heat crackled ferociously, devouring wood and iron alike. Lily followed Ethan toward the front door, but flames blocked the exit, smoke thickening rapidly. Desperation flashed in Ethan's eyes. The only alternative was a small back window. Ethan smashed the glass with a heavy iron tool, clearing jagged shards quickly. "Go," he ordered, hoarse from smoke inhalation. Lily hesitated. "You first." "No," he snapped fiercely. "I won't lose you like Clara. Now go." Tears blurred Lily's vision as she climbed out, glass slicing painfully across her palms. She landed heavily, coughing in fresh air, the ground cool beneath trembling hands. Ethan followed moments later, coughing harshly. Together they watched helplessly as flames devoured his livelihood. Dawn found them sitting side by side amid smoldering ruins, soot and sorrow marking them equally. Ethan stared hollowly at the charred remnants, defeat heavy on his shoulders. "They've taken everything." Lily touched his hand softly, resolutely. "No, not everything." He turned slowly, meeting her steady gaze. Her resolve sparked hope faintly within him. Together they were scarred, but alive. That mattered more now than ever. As sunlight bathed the prairie, a lone figure approached slowly, leading a horse. Lily stiffened fearfully as Emmett Cole's cruel face became clear, a triumphant sneer evident. "I warned you, Rains," Cole drawled lazily, surveying the destruction proudly. "Should have listened." Ethan rose steadily, body rigid with quiet fury. "You've done enough harm, Emmett. Leave now before." Cole laughed derisively. "Before what? You've got nothing left, blacksmith. No forge, no town support, and nothing but a cursed woman at your side." Lily stepped forward unexpectedly, surprising even herself. "You're wrong," she said clearly, voice shaking but firm. "He has far more than you'll ever understand." Cole's mocking gaze settled on her. "Quiet witch." "No," Lily pressed defiantly. "We may have scars you can see, but yours run deeper. You're the one who's cursed, with ignorance, fear, and cruelty." A dangerous flush darkened Cole's cheeks, his fists clenching tightly. For a moment violence seemed imminent, yet Ethan stood unflinching beside Lily, silently daring Cole to act. Cole's gaze wavered, uncertainty flickering briefly before he spat bitterly, turning his horse back toward Silver Creek. "You're both fools," he muttered darkly, galloping away. As dust settled, Lily sank beside Ethan again, exhaustion gripping her body, but strength glowing warmly in her heart. Ethan took her hand gently, warmth threading through his touch. "You're stronger than you know," he said softly. Lily squeezed his hand, courage steadying her voice. "Only because someone finally saw me." He smiled faintly, hope and determination returning slowly. "Then we'll rebuild together. Let them see our scars. They'll never break us again." In the silent aftermath, sitting shoulder to shoulder amid ashes, Lily finally understood survival wasn't merely enduring hardships. It meant rising again, stronger and unbroken, carrying scars proudly as marks of battles won. Dawn rose slow and silent over the prairie, its gentle rays filtering through wisps of smoke still lingering from the destruction of Ethan's forge. Lily watched Ethan closely, noting the stoic manner in which he surveyed the charred remains of his livelihood. His face revealed little, though a quiet tension lined his jaw. She recognized the weight he carried. It was one she had known intimately herself. Ethan knelt and sifted through the blackened debris, lifting the twisted remains of iron tools he had forged himself, now unrecognizable lumps of metal. His shoulders slumped slightly as he dropped them back into the ashes. Lily moved toward him gently, placing a cautious hand on his shoulder. "We'll rebuild," she said softly, hoping to ease the pain she knew he felt deeply. Ethan glanced at her, forcing a weary smile. "I know, but it's more than metal and wood I've lost. They tried to steal dignity, to shame us into hiding." Lily squeezed his shoulder firmly, determination brightening her eyes. "Then we refuse to let them win. We show them we can't be broken." Ethan straightened, brushing soot-covered hands against his trousers. His eyes, weary but clear, locked onto hers. "You surprise me daily, Lily. Your strength is humbling." She blushed lightly, warmth blooming inside her. "I learn from you." The quiet intimacy of their exchange was disrupted as a rattling wagon approached. Both tensed, preparing for another hostile encounter. Instead, the worn wheels revealed Doc McKinley, Silver Creek's elderly physician. His kind eyes, hidden behind spectacles, perched on a nose reddened by years in the sun. Doc McKinley stopped his wagon, surveying the ruin solemnly before stepping down slowly. His boots crunched on charred wood and ash, his expression grave. "I'm sorry, Ethan," he murmured sincerely. His deep voice weathered like old leather. "Shameful what they've done. The town should have stepped in." Ethan nodded quietly, grateful but still guarded. Folks made their choice clear enough. Doc glanced toward Lily, adjusting his spectacles thoughtfully. His gaze lingered momentarily on her face, not with judgment, but compassion. "Perhaps it's time someone showed this town the truth of its own ugliness." "How?" Lily asked carefully, intrigued by the older man's steady resolve. Doc smiled faintly, a wry edge sharpening his eyes. "Emmett Cole has secrets too. He's cheated more men than he's helped, hurt more than he's healed. If Silver Creek saw him clearly, perhaps they'd see themselves too." Ethan's brow furrowed. "You're suggesting we expose him?" "Precisely," Doc confirmed, his voice firm. "Light has a habit of chasing away shadows." Lily felt a stirring of hope. Doc McKinley's support meant more than mere kindness. It offered a tangible chance to reclaim their dignity, to confront prejudice directly. She glanced toward Ethan, who stood silent, contemplating. Finally, he nodded resolutely. "It's worth trying. We have nothing left to lose." "Then meet me tonight at the clinic," Doc said, climbing slowly back onto his wagon. "There's much to discuss." As Doc's wagon rattled away, Ethan faced Lily, eyes intense with newfound purpose. "Are you sure you want to face this openly?" Lily's heart quickened, a mixture of fear and excitement. "We have no choice. Running hasn't solved anything yet." Ethan reached out slowly, gently brushing hair from her face. His touch lingered briefly, tenderness mingled with quiet admiration. "You're brave, Lily, braver than most." "Only because I'm not alone," she replied softly. Evening descended swiftly, stars igniting one by one across a velvety sky. Ethan and Lily walked into town cautiously, mindful of curious gazes from townsfolk lingering near windows and porches. The clinic door creaked quietly as they entered, finding Doc McKinley waiting patiently, a lantern casting flickering shadows across the small room. "You're punctual," Doc greeted warmly, ushering them inside. He motioned toward chairs, his expression serious. "Listen closely. Emmett Cole's deceit runs deep. For years, he's taken money promising land deeds, livestock, and protection he never intended to deliver. Many folks have been wronged by him but fear retaliation." Ethan's jaw tightened visibly. "They're afraid to speak." Doc nodded gravely. "But courage is contagious. If someone shows the way, others may follow." Lily spoke up, her voice quiet yet resolute. "Then let us be the first. We'll confront him openly." Ethan regarded her admiringly, nodding firmly. "Lily's right. Fear feeds itself until someone stands firm." I've hidden enough from this town's cruelty. Then tomorrow in broad daylight we confront him publicly, Doc decided decisively. He'll come to town square. That's where we'll meet him with truth. Sleep evaded Lily that night. She paced quietly in Ethan's cabin, her mind racing with doubts and fears. Was she strong enough for the storm they were about to unleash? Footsteps echoed softly, and Ethan appeared, his eyes heavy with concern. "Can't sleep?" he murmured gently. She shook her head, vulnerability slipping past her careful defenses. "I keep wondering if I'm strong enough." Ethan moved closer, his presence solid and reassuring. "Lily, strength isn't lack of fear. It's walking forward even while trembling. You've already proven your courage." She drew comfort from his words, breathing deeply. "Are you afraid too?" Ethan's eyes softened, a faint, rueful smile appearing. "Terrified. But facing fear alone is different from facing it together." In the quiet darkness, they stood close, drawing strength silently from each other. The gentle intimacy between them deepened with every shared breath, creating a bond forged not merely by survival, but genuine trust and shared resilience. The following day dawned bright and clear, sunlight warming Silver Creek's dusty streets. The town square filled slowly as word spread of Ethan and Lily's challenge to Emmett Cole's authority. Whispers buzzed nervously, uncertain yet curious. Lily stood tall beside Ethan, heart racing, determined to hold her ground. Finally, Cole arrived, arrogance plain in his swagger. His sharp gaze assessed the gathering crowd, then settled coldly upon Ethan and Lily. "Come to admit defeat," he sneered loudly. "Or do you still cling to hope?" Lily stepped forward, voice unwavering. "We've come to speak truth. You've lied and cheated the good people of Silver Creek long enough." Cole's eyes narrowed dangerously. "Careful, girl." Doc McKinley stepped beside Lily, voice carrying authority and clarity. "It's true, Emmett. You promised deeds and cattle you never had. You've preyed upon fear and ignorance, and it ends today." Cole faltered briefly, surprise quickly replaced by fury. "You got no proof, old man." Suddenly, others moved forward, voices rising bravely from a crowd, emboldened by Lily and Ethan's courage. "He cheated me too," a voice cried sharply. Another followed. "Cole's a thief, always was." Panic flickered briefly in Cole's eyes, anger giving way to desperation. Ethan spoke, voice strong and resonant. "Your lies crumble beneath truth. It's over, Emmett." Cole's jaw tightened, humiliation darkening his features. Suddenly, rage overcame reason. He drew his revolver, leveling it directly at Ethan's chest. A gasp rippled through the crowd. Ethan stood steady, refusing to flinch. "Go ahead, Emmett. Kill the truth if you can. But lies won't protect you now." Cole's hand shook slightly, the barrel wavering. Silence stretched painfully, thickening tension unbearably. Lily stepped slowly in front of Ethan, voice trembling but clear. "Don't do this," she pleaded softly. "You'll only prove what we've already said, that your strength is false, your power nothing but fear." Cole stared wildly, torn between pride and shame. Slowly, defeat entered his eyes. With a guttural curse, he lowered his weapon, shoulders slumping. The crowd surged forward, relieved murmurs rising like waves. Sheriff Walker approached, confiscating Cole's weapon quietly but firmly. "Come on, Emmett. It's time." As Cole was led away, Lily felt Ethan's hand gently grasp hers, strong and reassuring. Their eyes met, silent gratitude exchanged. Together, they had faced fire and fear, emerging forged stronger by the flames. Doc McKinley's quiet voice broke through softly. Silver Creek needed this truth. Perhaps now it can heal. Ethan squeezed Lily's hand gently, eyes reflecting admiration and something deeper, warmer. "We'll heal too. Together." Lily smiled faintly, knowing that in Ethan she had found not just survival, but true belonging, a love that saw beyond scars, stronger than flames, unbreakable by any cruelty. As the crowd dispersed, the afternoon sun bathed Silver Creek in golden warmth, illuminating clearly what the night's darkness had hidden. Strength and beauty weren't found in perfection, but in courage, compassion, and the resilience of two hearts united. Days after Emmett Cole's public humiliation, Silver Creek began to settle, the town's initial outrage cooling into one comfortable silence. Lily and Ethan still drew curious glances, but hostility softened into quiet acceptance. They focused solely on rebuilding the forge, painstakingly salvaging what they could from the ashes. Together they worked, side by side beneath the fierce prairie sun, each moment deepening the bond forged through adversity. One quiet afternoon, as Ethan hammered glowing iron into shape, Lily watched him closely, captivated by the rhythm of his movements, confident and purposeful. Her heart fluttered gently, emotions she'd long suppressed rising to the surface. Ethan paused, sensing her gaze, wiping sweat from his brow with a tired smile. "What is it?" he asked, eyes gentle. Lily blushed softly, looking down. "I was just admiring how you shaped something beautiful out of ruin." Ethan set the hammer down carefully, approaching her with steady warmth. He lifted her chin gently, eyes sincere. "We both know beauty isn't always obvious at first glance." Lily held his gaze, vulnerability trembling softly in her voice. "Do you truly mean that, Ethan? Can you truly see me beyond your marks?" Ethan finished quietly, brushing a thumb tenderly along her pale, patchy skin. "Lily, your courage, kindness, and strength make you the most beautiful woman I've ever known." Her breath hitched, tears prickling at her eyes. "No one ever saw me that way." "Then they were blind," he murmured softly. "I see you clearly, Lily Harper." Before either could say more, a frantic voice cut sharply through their intimacy. Doc McKinley rode rapidly toward the forge, urgency etched deeply in his face. He swung from his horse, breathing heavily. "Ethan, Lily, there's trouble," he gasped. "Cole escaped custody last night. Sheriff Walker says he's armed, and he's coming back for vengeance." Ethan tensed instantly, eyes narrowing. "When?" "Soon," Doc replied gravely. "He's reckless and desperate. The whole town's on edge." Lily's pulse quickened fearfully. "Ethan, he'll try to hurt you." Ethan met her gaze, determination hardening his features. "We'll be ready. This ends today." They swiftly prepared, reinforcing doors, loading weapons, and steeling themselves for whatever darkness Cole might unleash. Anxiety coiled inside Lily, but this time, courage outshone fear. She refused to shrink back again. As evening shadows stretched long, tension thickened over Silver Creek. Ethan checked the revolver at his hip once more, glancing at Lily, whose steady composure inspired him. "Stay close," he murmured protectively. "No matter what." She nodded resolutely. Together. The sun dipped low, darkness painting the prairie in muted shades of violet and amber. Suddenly, hoofbeats echoed loudly through the silence. Cole thundered into view, disheveled, wild-eyed, revolver drawn and ready. "You ruined me," he roared, dismounting with dangerous fury. "You and that cursed witch." Ethan stepped forward calmly, blocking Lily protectively. "You ruined yourself, Emmett. No lies can change that." Cole aimed shakily, rage distorting his face. "I'll silence you both forever." Gunfire erupted, sharp cracks piercing twilight. Ethan dove aside, narrowly avoiding the first shot. Lily sheltered behind a wooden barrel, heart racing wildly. Ethan returned fire, bullets splintering would near Cole, forcing him back momentarily. "Give it up, Cole." Ethan shouted firmly. "Your hatred ends here." Cole snarled viciously, eyes blazing. "It ends when you're both dead." Another shot rang out. Pain erupted suddenly in Ethan's arm, blood seeping quickly through his sleeve. He staggered back, wincing sharply. Lily's breath caught painfully, fear gripping her heart. "Ethan!" she cried desperately, rushing toward him, ignoring danger. Cole seized the advantage, aiming directly at her exposed figure. Ethan lunged instinctively, shielding Lily with his wounded body. Another shot echoed deafeningly, missing by mere inches. Cole advanced rapidly, eyes wild. "Step aside, Rains." Ethan stood firm, blood soaking his arm, but defiance unbroken. "You'll never harm her." Fury twisted Cole's face grotesquely. "Then die together." In that critical instant, Lily glimpsed an abandoned iron tool on the forge floor. Without hesitation, she seized it and swung forcefully. Iron met bone with a brutal crack. Cole collapsed heavily, stunned, his revolver skittering away harmlessly into shadow. Sheriff Walker's posse galloped suddenly into view, guns trained sharply. They secured Cole swiftly, shackles clinking harshly around his wrists. Breathing raggedly, Lily turned urgently to Ethan, supporting him as his knees buckled slightly from pain and exhaustion. Blood seeped alarmingly through his fingers. "You're hurt," she whispered, fear catching sharply. He managed a strained smile, eyes bright with relief and admiration. "Better me than you." Doc McKinley hurried forward, examining Ethan's wound quickly. "It's deep, but he'll survive. Let's get him inside." Hours later, Ethan rested quietly beneath flickering lantern light, arm neatly bandaged, breathing steady again. Lily remained beside him, fingers gently entwined with his. She watched his peaceful sleep, emotions swelling powerfully within her heart, love, gratitude, and profound understanding. When Ethan's eyes fluttered open, warmth flooded through him, seeing Lily's quiet vigilance. "You're still here," he murmured softly, smiling faintly. Lily squeezed his hand tenderly. "Always." His gaze deepened thoughtfully. "Lily, after everything we've faced, will you marry me?" Her breath caught softly, joy radiating warmly. "Yes, Ethan." Without hesitation. Their shared smile spoke deeply of healing, trust, and new beginnings. Outside, stars burned brightly, witnessing promises forged stronger than iron or flame. Days later, the town gathered quietly near the rebuilt forge, silver moonlight cascading gently upon prairie grasses rustling softly. Lily stood proudly beside Ethan, dressed simply yet beautifully, her vitiligo unhidden, a symbol of strength now rather than shame. Doc McKinley conducted the ceremony warmly, his voice resonating through the peaceful night. "We've gathered beneath open skies to honor love tested by cruelty yet proven true. Ethan and Lily teach us beauty is courageously choosing kindness over fear." Eyes glistened softly among townsfolk, hearts quietly moved by the truth of Doc's words. Even those who'd mocked Lily felt quiet shame soften their gazes, witnessing strength and dignity radiate powerfully from the bride they once scorned. When Doc declared them husband and wife, joyous applause rippled gently through Silver Creek. Ethan gently cupped Lily's face, brushing tears softly from her cheeks. "You're beautiful," he whispered tenderly, voice thick with heartfelt sincerity. She smiled through tears, joy lighting her eyes vividly. "Because of you, I finally believe it." They kissed gently beneath endless stars, applause fading into respectful silence. The prairie stretched infinitely, promising freedom, hope, and infinite possibilities. Days turned peacefully into weeks. Ethan's forge rang again joyously with renewed life, townsfolk returning respectfully, humbled by events. Lily stood proudly at Ethan's side, scars proudly visible, a symbol of resilience triumphing over prejudice. One quiet evening, as twilight painted the horizon softly, Lily and Ethan sat close on their porch.
Grace Randall had learned to measure the passing seasons by loss, each winter carving deeper lines around her pale green eyes. The blizzard clawed at her cabin walls, rattling shutters, whispering like voices of the departed. She'd grown used to its bitter companionship. This isolated wilderness was home now, solitude her shield, grief her constant shadow. Yet tonight, something was different. Something was wrong. Grace stood by the hearth, fingers twitching nervously around the iron poker. The fire crackled, sending sparks spiraling upward, shadows dancing over her lean, determined face. Outside, through gaps in the wind's moaning, came another sound, faint, distant, unmistakably human. Her pulse quickened. Strangers this deep in the woods meant trouble. Grabbing her woolen shawl, Grace pushed open the cabin door. Bitter wind lashed her face, stinging her eyes, numbing her cheeks, yet she stepped defiantly forward. She moved into the swirling blizzard, her lantern's glow feeble against the swallowing dark. Snow crunched beneath heavy boots as she strained to hear the intruder's movements again. She halted abruptly. Dark crimson stains marred the fresh snow, jagged patterns leading toward the old pine grove behind the cabin. Grace's breath caught sharply. Blood meant violence, death, or danger lurking too close. Instinct screamed to turn back, barricade herself inside. Yet something deeper, an unyielding compassion, urged her onward. She tightened her grip on the lantern, eyes narrowing in cautious resolve, and followed the grim trail. Each step deeper into shadow brought visions of her past, her husband Samuel's lifeless body, bloody snow around him. Comanche arrows had ended their dreams that winter, shattered the illusion of safety. Yet still, she pressed forward, following the crimson path through the trees, snow-laden branches creaking ominously overhead. Ahead, beneath the towering silhouette of a great pine, a figure lay sprawled, still and silent. Grace froze, pulse hammering. Carefully she approached, heart tangled in fear and curiosity. It was a man, long black hair, partly obscuring his battered face. Grace lifted her lantern cautiously. Comanche. Every instinct flared into panic, anger, bitter memories swirling violently within her. But as her breath quickened, she noticed his desperate condition clearly. Blood pooling from a deep wound in his side, clothing torn, skin dangerously pale beneath copper hues. He looked young, vulnerable, nothing like the ruthless enemy she'd imagined every night since Samuel died. She hesitated, biting down on old fury. Compassion warred fiercely with grief. Her mind screamed to leave him, but her heart, shaped by trials and tempered by loss, could not. He was enemy, yet also a man, dying alone in the snow, just as Samuel had. She cursed softly, decision made. Working quickly, Grace knelt beside him. His shallow breathing clouded the icy air. Grimacing, she pressed a cloth against the wound, pulling him upright. He groaned weakly, eyes flickering open in startled confusion. Dark, intense eyes met hers, filled with wary suspicion. "Quiet," she hissed sharply, voice stern but steady. "You'll die here. Let me help you." He stared fiercely, consciousness wavering, pride and pain battling on his face. Finally he nodded once, a reluctant surrender, as his eyes rolled shut again. Grace looped his arm over her shoulder, muscles straining to bear his weight, determination giving strength to tired limbs. Stumbling under their shared burden, she dragged him toward home. Her cabin appeared like salvation through the swirling snow. Inside, she placed him upon her cot, his ragged breath fogging the room. Blood stained her hands, dark and warm, strangely intimate. She trembled briefly, fear surging, uncertain of her choice, yet unyielding in conviction. She stripped back layers of torn clothing, examining the wound with practiced efficiency. A single, deep gash, perhaps a knife's cruel kiss, one he wouldn't survive without swift care. Grace moved methodically, boiling water, preparing needle and thread. Her husband's old medical kit felt heavy with memories as she opened it. Her hand shook slightly as she sterilized the needle, memories flooding in, Samuel laughing gently, patching wounds of neighbors who came seeking his kindness. She'd watched often enough, quietly proud. Now his teachings guided her fingers. As she began stitching the stranger's torn flesh, his eyes opened again, this time sharp with awareness and distrust. His voice came hoarsely, accented and cautious. "Why, save me?" he rasped, eyes searching hers with distrust and confusion. Grace paused, needle hovering midair. "Because I know what it feels like to be helpless in the snow," she whispered, voice raw and truthful. He watched her carefully, assessing her sincerity. Slowly, he gave a faint nod, his expression softening, suspicion shifting to weary gratitude. "My name is Chogon," he murmured, voice softer now, vulnerability slipping through his guarded mask. Grace hesitated briefly, aware of the bond forged by sharing names. "Grace," she replied finally, quiet yet firm, returning to her stitching with renewed determination. They fell silent, broken only by quiet gasps of pain, the crackle of firewood. Gradually tension faded, replaced by cautious trust born of necessity. After she bandaged him, she offered broth, warming his chilled body, quieting the tremors of shock. His eyes never left her face, studying her every movement, understanding dawning slowly. "You live alone?" Chogon asked finally, glancing around the humble room. Grace stiffened defensively, grief etched in each guarded line of her expression. "Yes," she answered tersely. "Since your people took my husband from me." The bluntness hung heavy, tense silence suffusing the cabin. Cho'Gawn looked away, shame flickering briefly across his proud features. "Not all Comanche shed innocent blood," he whispered, voice raw and weighted. "War steals from both sides." She studied him thoughtfully, absorbing his quiet admission, recognizing sorrow mirrored in his eyes, pain from a past he clearly carried, too. Slowly, Grace nodded, an unspoken truce hanging delicately between them. Night deepened outside, wind battering walls in relentless fury. Grace knew danger lingered. Militia patrols often rode through, hunting Comanche scouts who ventured too close to settler cabins. If discovered harboring the enemy, she'd face brutal judgment. Yet she'd crossed a line tonight, stepping beyond hate into mercy, feeling inexplicably lighter for it. As sleep finally claimed Cho'Gawn, Grace sank wearily into a chair, vigilant gaze lingering on the wounded raider. Questions tormented her mind. What would Samuel say, seeing her sheltering his enemy? Would he understand her choice, her desperate need to break the endless cycle of hate? She drifted into restless sleep, dreams fractured with violence and redemption, waking abruptly at dawn to pounding fists against her door. Heart racing, she leapt to her feet, glancing frantically toward Cho'Gawn, still unconscious beneath heavy blankets. She pressed trembling fingers against the door, breathing deep to steady her voice. "Who's there?" she called out, voice steady despite mounting dread. "Open up, Grace." "It's Jacob Shaw," the militia leader's voice barked sharply, suspicion dripping from each syllable. "We're tracking Comanche." "Seen anyone?" She hesitated briefly, fear swirling thick and choking. One lie, she thought desperately, just one lie. Yet, words stuck bitterly in her throat. Lies tasted wrong. But surrendering Cho'Gawn meant betraying her soul's fragile new hope. Grace took a shaking breath, choosing defiance with clarity born of grief, kindness, and courage newly found. "I haven't seen anyone," she called back firmly. "It's just me." The silence stretched ominously, suspicion hovering unseen. "If we find otherwise, Grace, it'll be your head," Jacob warned coldly, footsteps retreating reluctantly through fresh snow. Grace leaned heavily against the door, heart hammering. Behind her, Cho'Gawn stirred weakly, opening heavy eyes, awareness sharpening instantly. "Trouble?" he asked quietly, voice cautious yet steady. "Yes," she answered simply, gazing at him soberly. "But I made my choice." He studied her, admiration growing quietly in his eyes, respect forming slowly yet unmistakably. Grace nodded once, acknowledging the silent promise forged through danger and sacrifice. Outside, snow resumed its relentless fall, erasing bloodstains, covering tracks. Inside, two souls faced uncertainty together, wounds deeper than flesh already beginning to mend. Grace knew clearly, there was no going back. The path she'd chosen now led into shadowed uncertainty, yet she felt lighter, freer, as though she'd shed chains she'd carried far too long. And quietly, bravely, she whispered to herself, voice firm with newfound courage, "Let them come. I'll face whatever storms blow next." The cabin walls seemed thinner since the militia's visit, every creak of timber amplified, every whisper of wind a warning. Grace moved cautiously about the room, each footfall deliberate, as if the slightest misstep might bring disaster. Behind her, Cho'Gawn lay awake, dark eyes fixed intently upon the rough-hewn beams overhead, chest rising and falling with measured breaths. Morning sunlight streamed through cracks in the shutters, casting delicate golden lines across the cabin floor. The blizzard had softened to a gentle snowfall, but tension still crackled fiercely between them. Grace paused, back turned, fingers gripping the wooden bowl she had just filled with steaming broth. "You should eat," she murmured, turning reluctantly to face him. Their eyes met, a brief, tense clash of wills, cautious and wary. Cho'Gawn pushed himself upright slowly, wincing as the movement pulled at his stitches. "Thank you," he responded quietly, taking the bowl carefully, his fingers brushing lightly against hers. The fleeting contact sent a ripple of unease, and something else she refused to name, through Grace's body. She withdrew quickly, retreating to the far side of the room where the shadows felt safer. Leaning against the cold wall, Grace crossed her arms defensively, watching him eat. Silence stretched tautly between them, laden with unspoken truths. "You took a great risk," Cho'Gawn finally broke the heavy quiet, voice calm but laced with curiosity. "Why protect me from your people?" Grace's jaw tightened, emotions warring openly in her expressive eyes. "Because they'd kill you without question. You're an enemy to them, and hiding you makes me a traitor. But justice isn't found at the end of a rope." Cho'Gawn nodded slowly, thoughtful. "Yet you have every reason to hate my people. Many settlers do." She inhaled sharply, grief briefly clouding her face. "Hate has already taken enough from me. I won't let it take more." He studied her carefully, respect deepening in the quiet intensity of his gaze. "It's rare, someone who sees clearly even through their pain." Grace looked away, shaken by the sincerity in his words. She busied herself by adding logs to the fire, flames crackling eagerly as warmth blossomed anew. The heat did little to ease the chill of uncertainty within her chest. As hours passed, the silence eased into something gentler, though caution never entirely faded. They spoke sparingly, testing boundaries, each revelation careful and tentative. Cho'Gawn explained quietly how he'd ended up wounded, ambushed by militia scouts while scouting ahead for his people, isolated from his group by the storm. His voice carried quiet pride tempered by sorrow, hinting at deeper losses unspoken. Grace listened intently, struggling against old prejudices that wanted desperately to see him as merely an enemy. Yet beneath that wariness stirred compassion, respect, for the dignity and quiet strength in Shogun's demeanor. "How long have you been alone here?" Cho'Gawn asked later, eyes keenly observing her expression. "2 winters," she replied quietly. "My husband was killed just beyond these woods, by arrows from your people. I found him in snow stained like yours." The confession hung heavily between them, charged and painful. Yet Grace saw no triumph in Shogun's eyes, only quiet sorrow and guilt. "My people fight for our land, our survival," Cho'Gawn responded gently. "But sometimes we become blind, forgetting that settlers too bleed and mourn." Grace nodded slowly, accepting the honesty in his words. "I suppose grief makes us all a bit blind," she admitted softly. A brief, hesitant smile flickered across Shogun's face, humanizing him further in Grace's eyes. She smiled back involuntarily, recognizing the fragile trust forming between them, born of necessity, growing despite their differences. Their fragile peace shattered abruptly with a sharp knock on the door, startling both into instant alertness. Grace froze, heart hammering, while Shogun's hand instinctively moved toward the knife at his side, hidden beneath blankets. She shook her head urgently, gesturing silence. She moved cautiously toward the door, opening it just enough to reveal Emma, her neighbor. Emma's pale, anxious face appeared, eyes darting nervously past Grace into the cabin. "Emma, what brings you out here?" Grace kept her tone deliberately casual, body blocking the doorway. Emma hesitated, gaze flickering uncertainly. "The militia returned. They're looking for that Comanche. Jacob Shaw's determined he's nearby. They're searching every cabin, Grace. I thought you should know." Grace swallowed sharply, mind racing. "Thank you, Emma. But there's nothing here for them to find." Emma studied her carefully, suspicion flashing briefly in her narrowed eyes before softening. "Be careful. Jacob's got a dark heart when he suspects betrayal." Emma disappeared into the snow swiftly, leaving Grace trembling slightly. Closing the door, she turned, seeing her own dread mirrored clearly on Shogun's tense features. "We're not safe here," she whispered fiercely, moving to gather supplies quickly. "They'll be back tonight. I'm certain of it." Cho'Gawn pushed himself up, pain evident but determination stronger. "Then we leave." Grace glanced sharply at him. "You can barely walk. Where would we go?" Shogun's gaze hardened with quiet resolve. "Into the deeper woods. My people have shelter, hidden places." Grace hesitated, fear warring with the fierce clarity of survival. Finally, she nodded in reluctant agreement, urgency overriding doubt. Quickly, efficiently, she prepared their escape, heart racing with adrenaline. Yet darkness fell swiftly, bringing bitter cold and unexpected danger. Heavy boots sounded suddenly on the porch, voices murmuring threats outside the thin wooden door. Grace's breath caught. Militia had come sooner than anticipated. Cho'Gawn grasped the knife grimly, eyes alert, tense muscles coiled beneath bandaged wounds. She shook her head urgently, guiding him silently into a hidden root cellar concealed beneath a rug near the hearth. Their eyes met briefly. Mutual trust and quiet fear exchanged silently, before she closed the trapdoor, hiding him from sight. The door burst open suddenly, sending frigid air swirling violently through the room. Jacob Shaw stepped inside, eyes cold and dangerous beneath a wide-brimmed hat. 3 armed men followed, each face grimly determined. Grace straightened defiantly, pulse hammering with terror masked by outward calm. "Grace Randall," Jacob drawled, his voice icy with menace. "I warned you not to lie. My scouts found tracks, 2 sets. 1 injured. Explain yourself." Grace met his accusing glare steadily, her voice carefully neutral. "Tracks mean nothing. I ventured out looking for firewood." Shaw's gaze narrowed sharply. "Odd, Grace, how your firewood always seems to bleed into the snow." The soldiers began tearing apart the small cabin methodically, throwing furniture aside, weapons glinting threateningly. Grace stood rigidly, face calm but heart racing wildly, praying Chogon stayed quiet below. Minutes stretched agonizingly as the search continued, tension thick enough to choke. Then, abruptly, a soldier's voice shouted triumphantly, "Over here, Captain!" Grace's heart plunged. The cellar. Her careful secret was unraveling before her eyes. She moved instinctively forward, only to be seized roughly, held helpless as Jacob threw back the trapdoor, revealing Chogon below, knife raised defiantly despite obvious weakness. Jacob smiled cruelly. "Found our savage. You disappoint me, Grace. Thought you had better sense." Chogon was dragged brutally upward, fighting vainly against stronger hands. Grace shouted desperately, struggling fiercely. "Stop. He's wounded. He's done nothing." Jacob turned sharply, voice cutting viciously. "Helping Comanche is betrayal. Treason's price is steep, your life alongside his." Grace stared back unflinching, strength blazing suddenly, anger overtaking fear. "Murdering us won't bring peace, only more blood. Listen to reason, Jacob." But Shaw's heart was stone, eyes burning with bitter righteousness. "Reason died long ago in these woods. Bind them." Shogun's gaze met Grace's, quiet respect deepening into something fiercely protective and unspoken. Her heart clenched painfully, realizing suddenly how deeply she trusted this man who'd been her enemy mere hours before. Rough ropes bound their wrists, the biting cold outside awaiting their execution. Soldiers dragged them roughly from the cabin, torches illuminating grim, triumphant faces. Yet as they emerged into snowfall, shouts erupted unexpectedly, confusion spreading rapidly through the militia ranks. A sudden volley of arrows hissed silently from surrounding shadows, narrowly missing Grace, striking militiamen precisely, scattering their ranks. Comanche warriors materialized silently from shadows, fierce and determined. Shogun's companions come to rescue their brother. Jacob cursed violently, chaos overtaking his carefully planned judgment. Grace met Shogun's eyes through the swirling violence. Amid fear, confusion, and hope, their gazes locked fiercely, bond forged deeper through shared peril. She felt strangely calm amidst chaos, choosing trust over fear as arrows flew and rifles cracked in the frigid darkness. Snow fell gently, covering bloodshed, hiding secrets, whispering of survival as Grace stood defiantly beside the enemy she'd chosen, feeling paradoxically freer than ever, even as battle raged fiercely around them. Flames crackled fiercely in the heart of the village square, embers sparking into the cold night air like fiery stars against a canvas of darkness. Grace's wrists ached from the rough ropes that bound them, her heart thudding heavily beneath her ribs. Beside her stood Chogon, silent and defiant, his chin raised with quiet dignity despite the brutality that marred his bruised face. Jacob Shaw paced menacingly before them, eyes glittering with anger and barely restrained violence, illuminated harshly by the bonfire's restless flames. Townsfolk gathered warily, their faces pale with uncertainty and fear, their murmurs a hushed chorus of suspicion. "Friends," Jacob began, voice pitched low but cutting sharply through the frigid silence. "We stand here tonight because treachery has stained our community." He pointed accusingly at Grace, eyes blazing. "Grace Randall sheltered this Comanche savage, placing all your lives at risk. Such betrayal demands swift justice." Grace lifted her head proudly, meeting Jacob's eyes without flinching. "Justice," she countered, voice calm yet strong enough to carry clearly to those gathered. "You call murdering an injured man justice? Is cruelty all we've become?" A ripple of quiet murmurs stirred through the crowd. Eyes shifted uneasily between Jacob and Grace, tension stretching tautly between cruelty and compassion. Jacob's jaw clenched tightly, eyes darkening dangerously. "We lost good people to his tribe, Grace, your husband among them. And yet you chose this savage over your own blood." Grace's throat tightened painfully, grief washing briefly through her before resolve strengthened her voice. "My husband believed in mercy. He healed wounds rather than deepening them. Should I honor his memory with hate?" The townsfolk watched silently, emotion clouding their expressions. Grace searched their faces desperately, seeking flickers of empathy or understanding. Beside her, Chogon stood motionless, gaze locked on the firelight, features hardened against pain and humiliation. "Mercy," Jacob mocked sharply, stepping forward. "Did his people show mercy when arrows cut down your husband? Did they spare your grief then?" "They did not," Grace admitted, voice thick with sorrow yet unwavering. "But this man here was not responsible for that crime. Killing him changes nothing. It won't ease our grief." Jacob shook his head bitterly, turning deliberately toward Chogon. "Does the savage speak for himself, or does he hide behind your skirts, Grace?" Chogon raised his chin defiantly, dark eyes meeting Jacob's contemptuous stare. When he spoke, his voice resonated deeply, carrying quiet strength and surprising dignity. "I speak plainly enough, if you listen beyond your hatred. Yes, your people suffered, but so have mine. Endless vengeance will drown us both in blood." Jacob sneered coldly, hatred etched starkly across his features. "Your tribe raids, murders, and you speak of peace? Lies won't spare you from the justice you deserve." Shogun's eyes darkened, yet remained steady. "Not lies, truths you refuse to hear. My people fight because you claim land that was ours for generations. But violence has cost us both dearly. Look around you and see clearly for once." Unease spread visibly among the villagers, their quiet whispers growing louder, confusion replacing certainty. Jacob sensed his grasp slipping, eyes narrowing angrily. Enough. This savage bewitched Grace Randall, turning her against her own people. They must pay the price. Hang them both. Grace inhaled sharply, icy fear tightening in her chest. Yet when she looked sideways, finding Shogun's gaze fixed steadfastly upon her, silent courage flowed fiercely back into her heart. "You can silence us," Grace called out clearly, voice ringing defiantly, "but it won't silence the truth. Hatred brought us here, but forgiveness could lead us away." Her words resonated powerfully among those watching, many shifting uncertainly, torn between fear and the quiet appeal of Grace's conviction. Voices rose hesitantly from the edges of the gathering, townsfolk who remembered her kindness, her quiet resilience through seasons of grief and isolation. "Grace helped my boy when fever nearly took him," a woman called out suddenly, voice trembling but determined. "She stitched my leg after an accident in the fields," added a gruff man softly, shame coloring his tone. Jacob glared fiercely, fury overtaking reason. "Silence. Will you defend traitors?" "Grace Randall's no traitor," another voice challenged bravely. "She's always protected us, even at her own risk." Emotions warred openly now, villagers voicing hesitant doubts, sympathy stirring bravely against Jacob's cold cruelty. Grace felt cautious hope bloom warmly, desperately fragile, yet undeniably real. Jacob drew his revolver abruptly, holding it threateningly above his head. "Enough talk. Any more defiance, and you'll join them in judgment." The crowd fell silent instantly, fearful eyes wide, uncertainty hanging thickly in the frozen air. Grace's heart sank painfully. Jacob's hatred seemed unbreakable. She glanced once more toward Chogon, whose proud silence conveyed a steady reassurance that bolstered her faltering courage. Yet in the tense stillness, movement erupted suddenly at the village's edge. Figures emerged swiftly from the shadows, Comanche warriors appearing silently, weapons poised yet held respectfully at their sides, their faces calm yet fiercely resolved. Alarm spread quickly through the villagers, fearful murmurs rising anew. Jacob swung his weapon wildly, eyes blazing with fear-driven fury. Ambush! Kill them all! Jacob shouted frantically, panic shattering his careful control. But Cho'Gan raised his bound hands calmly, voice cutting authoritatively through the chaos. Wait. No blood needs shedding tonight. My people come peacefully, seeking only to prevent unjust death. The lead Comanche stepped forward slowly, bow lowered, gaze meeting Jacob's directly. We followed blood and footprints here, seeking our brother. Yet tonight, we find your justice is only vengeance disguised as righteousness. Jacob trembled visibly, torn between fury and fear, confusion twisting his expression into desperation. Villagers watched, uncertain, tension shimmering dangerously between peace and violence. Jacob, Grace said softly, gently yet firmly, this hatred will only bury more graves. Please, lower your weapon. Let this night end differently. Jacob stared at her fiercely, internal battle raging violently behind hard eyes. Grace held her breath painfully, pulse hammering, desperate hope quivering tenuously. Slowly, Jacob's arm lowered fractionally, defeat and confusion clouding his expression briefly, until rage surged bitterly once more, hatred overwhelming reason. He snarled sharply, raising his gun swiftly toward Cho'Gan. In that heartbeat, Grace moved instinctively, throwing herself protectively in front of Cho'Gan as Jacob fired. Pain flared violently through her shoulder, spinning her sideways. Gasps rose from villagers and warriors alike, horror dawning sharply in Jacob's widening eyes as realization struck cruelly home. Grace staggered, knees buckling beneath sudden agony, yet she remained upright, defiance blazing fiercely even through pain. You see now, Jacob? She breathed heavily, voice raw yet resolute. Hatred wounds innocent hearts. How many more must bleed? Jacob stumbled backward, revolver slipping from numbed fingers, horror dawning starkly in his eyes. Warriors moved cautiously forward, villagers watching uncertainly yet without fear, all stunned by Grace's brave sacrifice. Cho'Gan stepped forward swiftly, wrists unbound suddenly by a swift blade from his approaching companions. His arms steadied Grace gently, dark eyes filled deeply with concern and respect. You risked everything, he murmured softly, admiration and gratitude clear. She smiled faintly despite pain, strength flowing warmly from his touch. As did you. The warriors surrounded Jacob cautiously, yet held no malice, only firm resolve. Let tonight end without further bloodshed, their leader spoke quietly yet firmly, eyes pleading silently with gathered villagers. We've seen clearly the cost hatred demands. Let wisdom choose our path now. Silence stretched thickly before finally breaking with murmured agreements, cautious yet hopeful voices echoing hesitant approval. Jacob knelt numbly, defeated, understanding finally crashing harshly upon him. Grace leaned gratefully into Shogun's gentle strength, hope blossoming cautiously anew amidst pain. Tonight had forged bonds deeper than hatred's reach, yet dangers still lingered close, unspoken questions whispering anxiously at the edges of relief. She knew this fragile peace might not hold, but perhaps tonight had sown seeds strong enough to withstand future storms. As flames died slowly, stars emerged brightly overhead, whispering quiet promises of hope, redemption, and courage yet to be tested. Grace drew a shuddering breath, resolved now to face whatever dawn brought next, with courage forged in firelight, heart forever changed by trials overcome and truths revealed beneath stars she no longer faced alone. The sky above was pale and unyielding, a stark canvas stretched tautly over the frozen landscape, waiting patiently for the drama unfolding beneath its impassive gaze. Grace Randall, wounded yet resilient, stood silhouetted against the endless white expanse, her breathing shallow, shoulder throbbing in rhythmic agony from Jacob's bullet. Beside her, Shogun's presence was steady, a pillar of quiet strength and unwavering resolve. Their brief, fragile truce hung precariously in the frozen air, villagers and Comanche warriors watching each other with wary respect, tension simmering just beneath outward calm. Jacob Shaw knelt defeated at the circle's center, stripped of his power and fury, haunted eyes staring blankly into snow churned dark with conflict. Grace took a careful, measured breath, stepping forward slowly, boots sinking softly into the fresh snow. Each step radiated quiet strength, determination shining brightly in her pale green eyes. Jacob, she spoke gently yet clearly, voice cutting through silence. "We've all lost more than enough already. Let tonight's bloodshed be the last." Jacob lifted hollow eyes toward her, bitterness mingled now with shame. "How can you forgive this, Grace? How do you offer kindness to him, to them, after what you've lost?" She regarded him steadily, sorrow and compassion blending seamlessly in her expression. "Forgiveness isn't easy. But neither is hate. I choose the harder path because someone has to stop the cycle. And I choose it now, for Samuel, for all who've bled and died senselessly." Her words rippled quietly among villagers and warriors alike, each heart wrestling silently with its own griefs and resentments. Yet a sense of fragile hope seemed to emerge softly from beneath layers of distrust and pain, whispering tentative promises of peace. Cho'Gawn stepped gently forward, dark eyes earnest, bearing quiet dignity. "Your people fear mine, and mine yours. Yet beneath our fear, we share wounds too deep for words. Tonight, let healing begin with mercy." Jacob stared at him for a long moment, jaw tense, pride warring openly with guilt. Finally, shoulders sagging wearily, he nodded once, a grudging but genuine surrender. "Maybe you're right. Maybe enough blood's been spilled in this cursed snow." Relief flooded Grace's chest, though the wound in her shoulder pulsed insistently, weakening her body even as hope strengthened her spirit. She stumbled slightly, knees faltering. Instantly Cho'Gawn moved to steady her, his touch gentle yet firm, warmth spreading comfortingly from his strong hands. "You're badly hurt," Cho'Gawn murmured softly, voice tight with concern. Grace smiled weakly, leaning gratefully against his side. "I'll survive. I always do." He shook his head slightly, lips curving into a faint, respectful smile. "You're stronger than most warriors I know, Grace Randall." Around them, villagers approached cautiously, shame and gratitude mingling clearly on their faces. Quiet murmurs arose, apologies offered, forgiveness gently extended. The Comanche warriors relaxed visibly, tension ebbing softly into careful but promising acceptance. Even Jacob was helped slowly to his feet, bitterness softened now by hard-won humility. Yet as fragile calm took tentative root, a sudden commotion erupted sharply from the distant tree line, splitting the moment's delicate peace. A panicked cry rang out, "Riders coming fast!" All turned sharply, hearts leaping fearfully as riders burst suddenly from shadowed trees. Militia scouts loyal to Jacob, guns drawn, galloping swiftly toward the gathered assembly. Confusion erupted wildly, cries scattering into chaos. Jacob paled visibly, horror dawning sharply across his face. "No, stop. Hold fire!" he shouted desperately, but the scouts approached relentlessly, weapons poised, misreading the scene as hostile. Grace's heart lurched wildly. Violence once again threatened to undo everything. Cho'Gawn steadied her, dark eyes flashing determination. "Stay here," he ordered firmly. But Grace gripped his hand fiercely, shaking her head stubbornly. "We stand together, or not at all." Understanding passed silently between them, trust and respect forged irrevocably through trials shared. Nodding briefly, they turned together, stepping bravely forward to confront the approaching threat. Gunshots cracked sharply, snow erupting violently around their feet as the scouts fired warning shots, anger and misunderstanding driving reckless decisions. Jacob shouted frantically, attempting vainly to regain command, his voice drowned beneath chaos. Cho'Gawn raised both hands high in surrender, voice resonating clearly above panicked shouts. "Enough. Lay down your weapons. We seek only peace." Yet fear and rage deafened reason. Bullets whistled dangerously close. Grace's pulse thundered in terror and desperation. This fragile peace threatened irreparably. She stepped forward recklessly, voice raw but powerful with conviction. "Stop this madness," she shouted desperately, standing exposed, courage blazing fiercely despite mortal peril. "Look around you. Your enemy is fear, not each other." Her voice rang sharply through the chaos, echoing powerfully across frozen fields. Silence descended abruptly, scouts pulling reins sharply, guns lowering hesitantly, confusion evident on their faces. Jacob stepped quickly forward, desperation tightening his expression. "They're right. This fight ends now. We've bled enough, don't spill more innocent blood." Slowly, hesitantly, weapons lowered further, tension draining visibly from wary shoulders. The scouts dismounted cautiously, uncertain eyes glancing nervously among villagers and Comanche alike. Grace felt exhaustion wash heavily through her limbs, wounded body trembling slightly beneath adrenaline's fading surge. Chogon steadied her once more, his presence quiet reassurance amidst lingering uncertainty. Jacob stepped forward, finally taking clear responsibility. This conflict began with me. I was blinded by vengeance, driven by fear. But Grace showed me tonight, hate solves nothing. If punishment must come, let it fall on me alone. Villagers watched silently, moved by Jacob's genuine remorse and courage to confront consequences openly. Quietly, one elder stepped forward, voice gentle but firm. Jacob, tonight taught us all something bitter yet hopeful. Perhaps justice demands no more blood, only understanding and forgiveness. Slow murmurs rose quietly in agreement, villagers nodding cautiously but earnestly, hope flickering tentatively in their softened gazes. Comanche warriors too nodded solemnly, accepting peaceful resolution without rancor. Grace drew a ragged, relieved breath, feeling Shogun's steady heartbeat